Okay, so today is Tuesday, July 29th. This is just for the Journey series. Maybe I'll put this up in the other channel, probably. Greetings, brothers and sisters, for the Gratefulness meditation. Um, so, those of you who've watched the Journey series know that I have a possible abscess of the tooth, something wrong with my tooth, infection, definitely infection. In the gum teeth area, not so much maybe an abscess as an infection in that area, which is a strange thing. The whole thing is strange. And that can be life-threatening. It's not, but it could be debilitating. Or just create chronic issues, it's a stressful thing. I'm not in pain. It's been going on for about a month. Clearly infected to some extent, but, inconclusive. And I'm dealing with a shitty dentist and having to change over maybe to another dentist. Well, definitely changing over another dentist, hopefully a good one. And then, avoiding and not getting a root canal, which would be the obvious thing, obvious step, which is not all that obvious because one dentist wants to send me to a specialist. So, I've talked about this for the Journey series people. And so, I said in my my videos about the gathering that, I really didn't get sick so much before. And now, so usually when you have a good gathering, there's some sort of cleaning and something like that, right? It's always good to get it over beforehand for the obvious reasons. Like if you get sick after the gathering, it's, it can be, when you get sick in general, you'll see this with kids, like it's almost like, more of their personality, more of their soul has descended into their body. Like kids will evolve after an illness, like some kind of, it's like they're getting a program, like a upgrade, and the upgrade causes some disturbances in their physical body, but there's more, they're more of who they are going to be and whatever it is. And, the same thing for adults, it's not as easy to see. But that's why when you go to these gatherings, it's often some kind of physical discomfort. Now, it doesn't hurt the tooth, and it's tender, and it's obviously something I've been concerned about, but I didn't think it was affecting me. But then I started to get really like drained and tired. Like I guess I'm fighting off the infection. Maybe it's hard to say. After the gathering, I've been kind of out of it, which is also, could be the spiritual part of it. But either way, it's more of a stress thing, right? Like it's a situation where it's not clear what I need to do in terms of I don't know what the options are other than a root canal, and having an abscess infection also often leads, my wife was just, reading about this, that it often leads to this cancers. Root canal, and again, I'm not giving medical advice here, but this is, my understanding and what I believe about it, and leads to like heart disease because it's a bacteria doesn't get effectively dealt with by the root canal, so it's pushed farther into the bloodstream, and so mouth infections. My wife was just, reading about this. Coincidentally, like at the same time, are often attributed to cancer. Like everyone who has cancer had some kind of a mouth infection or something. And so, I've been aware of this for a while. So, like, it's one of those things where it's like stressful. And I've gotten older to the extent where I just see my body as I'm in the last, fourth or third of my life, probably fourth of my life, or between the two, more like, a little bit more than a fourth of my life, and at some point you just kind of fall apart. Like you just, there's times that you don't see somebody for a while, like in, my brother or whatever, or didn't talk to him. And I could see that just from the conversations, he was not there as much. Like he was, repeating himself, repeating stories in the same conversation, and just, wasn't as sharp And so you see this physically, like seeing my dad after about 4 or 5 years, and he was just fucking old as shit, right? Like it's just like you fall off a cliff. And so, like, things like this are part of that, right? Some kind of, issue. So, I have to deal with that. Like, it's not a pain. It wasn't like a lot of discomfort during the gathering or beforehand and after. But yesterday, like, I had trouble sleeping again where I was really restless. And that was what was happening before the gathering. And I might be going through detox because I'm taking ivermectin for the, whatever was left over in terms of COVID. And it seems to be helping because the one issue I was having was an irregular heartbeat. And I haven't really had that pretty much, during this time I've been taking ivermectin. I don't know if the ivermectin's helping with the infection. It's just like, I don't know. It was definitely there beforehand, this tenderness. And then I also have to deal with the bottom teeth are now hitting the one tooth that's infected. Like, it's just, it's just whatever. And I don't think that was the case beforehand. Like, I don't think it's just more sensitive or I'm more aware of it. I think it's been hit, something's happening. So, like, this whole thing, I'm supposed to get Invisalign. So there's all this stuff. But I'm saying this because, to do with the gathering, like, I got sucked into this stressful material thing in a stressful dental office where they're just, I've had bad experiences, and I talked about that in, one of my videos, my last video. The video's going up today about, mostly about Trump, but I talk about the dentist thing at the beginning, at the end of it. And that video is entitled, because it just doesn't effing matter. And so that video's going up in about, it's almost 9, it goes out at 9 a.m. today. Today's Tuesday, July 28th, or 9th, I guess, 9th. And so, what I was trying to get to here is you want to retain your spiritual condition as long as possible. And I think it's like, maybe it's still there. I mean, it's definitely still there. But it gets, like, you get pulled away from it by material events. And I felt so great after the gathering. It was just a wonderful gathering. And maybe this will still be there. We'll see. But yesterday, like, again, I was having trouble sleeping. I was just really restless, like physically restless, where I can't, I'm really tired, but and some irritation and anger and restlessness is there. Which, again, the detox part, like, I don't know how much it's at, which I am glad to be going through, but, it affects my sleep and this kind of thing. And that stopped during the gathering, like I was, for a while, so I don't know. I mean, if it just overrode the physical. But, this is like the bad part of material life, that things come in and, pull you away from your spiritual, whatever, spiritual bliss or whatever you're having. It's like these gatherings that happen that eventually stuff happens and you gotta, like, come back to the world. So, like, I still feel a lot of it even now. So, I mean, I thought, partly that's because I was tired, but, like, I felt, just withdrawn and inward and just, like, staring at the wall, not thinking about anything, which is an after effect of a good gathering, where you're just kind of, you're going through life, you're just going through the motions, but you're not all that present. But anyways, so that's kind of an update here of sorts. I won't put this up on the backup channel today because of I have to do the individual sitting. I'm way ahead of videos. I have 3 videos ready to go. One's going to be up at 9 this morning. And then for the next 2 days, and then, I mean, there's topical stuff happening with Trump as he implodes. Like, I put this one video up early on my regular channel because that's just, he's in Europe and he's just, like, shit in the bed. It's bad. He's just falling apart. And so, like, it's, which isn't a good thing because you look at these European politicians and they gotta be like, holy fuck, after the senile Joe Biden. And so, it's just we're heading into whatever we're heading into, and then, there's not going to be a support system medically. Like, I've had bad experiences with dentistry my whole life. But, I told that story about getting these metal fillings when I was a kid when I didn't need them, just so the dentist could, they have this. It's a business scam, right? Like this medicine, for-profit medicine. So I avoid for-profit medicine as much as possible. But as you get older, there's going to be some things you need it for, unfortunately. And I don't take pharmaceuticals really ever, but occasionally I have to take penicillin, and the dentist said the penicillin wasn't going to get in there, so I'm trying other things, and whatever. I'm going to this other dentist. But like, what if that didn't exist and I just had this thing? It's just like, well, I'm going to pull my own tooth, right? I mean, like, just it's bad. Like, it's just that's the issue. Like, I'm not big on the medical system, but some things are beyond your ability to do and deal with. But that's like, I'm talking about a apocalyptic type situation where the whole system goes down. You don't have dentistry anymore, and you don't have allopathic medicine, which is which is in many ways a good thing, but then you're going to die of shit. Like, there's things that you die of, infections and things. There's herbal medicines and other things that you can do about it, but there's some things that once in a while you have to use allopathic medicine for. For me, again, I'm not giving medical advice, but it's always a last-ditch thing. And so, I've been working towards that. There's certain things I won't, I'm not going to get like chemotherapy or not. There's things I just won't do that I don't believe in. But anyways, so there we are. Well, there'll be updates about this, I'm sure, in the Journey series at least. And, I feel kind of like the gathering is still present. I mean, not kind of. I feel right now I feel good about it. But again, I'm a little bit tired. But, not really wanting to be out in the material world. Like, that's a sign of a good gathering where you just, like, it's just, I don't want to go deal with this. But eventually you have to go back to work or back, dealing with family stuff and whatever issues you have. And then, and then the gathering sort of fades in the distance, but you had this experience which uplifted you to whatever extent. And then, you have the, maybe a different, a higher level of a spiritual approach. And so that's always positive, but, it's still, you have something that you can fall back on, and you still meditate and you do your, practice, and you still have the sittings and things to go through. But anyways, so there we are. I think that's enough for now. Okay, I also have this audio on truth. These are old audios, so but I have an audio here on truth. There'll be a little bit more I'll put on the second part in the Journey series, but this is really kind of an inspired audio, I think, and so it really doesn't have anything to do with what I was just talking about. The two thing is, today's Thursday, July 31st. I have a dentist appointment, but I think it's definitely gotten somewhat better. So, but I'm really weak and tired, and I don't know. Sometimes after a gathering, you're just, I don't want to say lazy because that's not an accurate description, but it's trouble. It takes time to get going again. Sometimes you come out just fired up and ready to jump back into life or whatever. But, I've had some health issues and some fatigue. And I don't know if it's just the abscess. I also don't do that well with penicillin, which I'm on. But anyways, I did this audio last night, and it's just kind of an inspired audio. And so it's about why people don't seek the truth. And so I'll put that here. Okay, so this is July 30th, Wednesday night, almost 10 o'clock. I just had these ideas, and I wanted to put them down while I had them fresh in my mind. And so there's a saying within the psychological community, fixing the facts to fit your feelings, or changing the facts to fit your feelings. One of those two. Same thing, right? Where you adjust the facts because of the way that you feel. If you want to hate somebody, right, you'll find a way. There's people who are like the best people. They're successful and yet humble. They do charity work, all those types of things. I don't believe that is, it's not my definition of success, but it's still a good thing, right? They check all the boxes. And yet there are lots of people that hate those people, right? You understand this, like somebody who's just really good person, really happy, good person, and does great things for everybody. But there'll be people who are jealous and hate that person, or just, whatever it is, whatever reason it is. There's no justification to hate that person, but people root for people like that to fail. They root for people who they haven't done anything to you, and really maybe to anybody. And people want them to go to the dark side, right? They want to drag people down to a level of cynicism and hatred and envy and, all these negative things, right? And if you ask the person why they hate that person, they will figure out a way to make it make sense, right? Because that's how people are. That we have our feelings, which are really our emotions, and also our beliefs. And we'll do anything to change reality around us to fit those beliefs, right? Fit those feelings, fit those emotions. And you see it all the time. And the evidence is easier to find than the lies themselves, because you have to get inside a person's head, right? You have to, they won't maybe admit to what they're thinking and maybe don't even understand themselves. They're distorted reality. But the evidence of distorted reality is that people are so fucked up. Because if you weren't distorting reality, you would be living an efficient life. You wouldn't have any habits like gambling, smoking, womanizing, cheating, drugs, lying, hatred, failure, self-sabotage, low self-esteem, victim consciousness, abuse. None of those things would exist. If people were honest with themselves, they wouldn't do those things. If there was no way to rationalize things, then it wouldn't exist. If there's no victim consciousness, there wouldn't exist. And victim consciousness is deceptive. Because I've said this before, if there's a God, there's a plan. If there's no God, there's no plan, right? There's chaos. When people think of something like the metaverse, right? So the idea of the metaverse is that every time you enter a choice point, right? So let's say you have to make a choice. And some version of you makes an infinite amount of wrong choices. And that sets apart a new timeline that's created, where that version of you lives in a different timeline with other people. And that timeline is altered to the one that you were in before, because there was a choice point and there were 50,000, 500,000 different choices a person can make, infinite amount of choices, and there's all these various timelines. And so that seems really sloppy. Like, why would there be all these alternative realities? It's stupid. Doesn't make sense. So the only way that would not be the case is if we didn't have freedom of choice, that we have the illusion of freedom of choice. The choices that we make are based in the way that we feel, but our choices are always going to be the same, so there's only one timeline. That no matter what, this choice is going to be made by each person, no matter how wrong it is or how ungodly it is or how godly or whatever it is, right? It's still the choice that's going to be made. It's a part of one timeline, and there's only one choice available. People think they're choosing, but they're really not. And so, in all that, it's the way that we feel about the choice, because it's our emotions, our feelings, our internal interpretation that can be adjusted. We can adjust the way that we go about our relationship with God, our relationship with our life, our relationship with the world. That's why I always talk about gratitude being the highest choice. If you are choosing to be grateful in all these circumstances, then you are bowing down and accepting God's will no matter what it is. And so that's why saints get horrific things happen to them and difficult circumstances, because if they can remain grateful, then they're free of all this bondage, because there's nothing that God can do to them, or there's no part of the script that they won't accept as being God's will and be grateful for it, right? And so that's why gratitude is the ultimate condition. But the other side of that is victim consciousness, where you feel like a victim and God's fucking boning you and, screwing you over, and fuck you, God, and I don't deserve this, and, why are you doing this to me? And that could be atheism or being agnostic, or any of these other things. Gnosticism, is it? It's called. But either way. So in the assault cycle, and I've shown this in the past, and I'm not going to show it here, but the person, the abuser, the victim, they go into a victim stance, which allows them to distort reality, feeling that they've been wronged. So therefore, they get to give themselves permission to do something wrong. And because they've been screwed over, something's unfair, they can extract some sort of satisfaction, and that involves the pain and suffering of other people, whether it be stealing from them or abusing them or any number of things, right? And so this is where, all the distortions of reality come in, where people rationalize their wrong behavior because they've been victimized and somehow life is treating them unfairly and things are unjust, and, all these types of things. And it comes down to their ultimate feeling about God and their ultimate feeling about themselves, right? So the distortion of reality is when you talk about something. If you see an event and you talk to 10 other people and each person has a different interpretation of the event. You watch a movie and each person thinks that the hero was justified, or the hero was actually the villain and the villain was justified, or whatever number of explanations they have. It's because they all have a distorted personal view, personal lens of what's going on. And because each person is invested in their own beliefs and their own victim consciousness and their own emotions, they are distorting reality to fit those things. And that's why you have people who, with all the evidence supporting that Joe Biden was senile and he was a big bag of shit, they built him up like he was some sort of great man and wonderful president, even though he was shitting himself and he was bumping into things because he lost his cognitive abilities. The same way that the Trumpers have distorted reality and to make Trump to be some sort of fucking messiah, when the guy is a narcissistic scumbag, abusive dumbass who is not capable of playing 5D chess and is so obviously a fucking buffoon. And you see this time and time again throughout our civilization. People are distorting the reality around them and willfully lying to themselves and other people. And when God presents them, when the divine plan presents them with facts to show that their beliefs and their feelings and their emotions are wrong, they lock down and they go deeper. They go deeper into their denial and deeper into their anger and deeper into their fuck you, God. I want to believe whatever I want to believe. And so that's why there's not really very many truth seekers. Because to be a truth seeker, you have to be looking to correct the distortion in your worldview. The things, your self-talk and your rationalization and your excuses for doing the wrong thing. And, very few people are willing to do that, even partially, even just a little bit. A little bit of self-improvement, a little bit of, I'm full of shit, let me do something to adjust my, my lens, my distorted lens. And when you get evidence given to you graciously by your experience through the divine system that's trying to get you to confront and erase all your bullshit and bring you back to your pristine original condition, at the purest self, the purest version of your soul, the innocence of your soul, where there's no distortion and there's none of these negative feelings and emotions and beliefs and things that are making you into an abomination. And so, everybody thinks their view of the world is right, and their group of people is somehow better than everybody else, and they all view the world the same way, and they pat each other on the back, and they applaud each other's bullshit, and even when they get confronted. Remember when the QBs were so fucking rattled after Trump turned on them, and he lost the election, and they thought, because of the Q drops, something else was going to happen. They didn't know what the fuck to do, but they regrouped. They didn't fucking just, change. I mean, some of them did, but many of them just adopted another bullshit fucking a bullshit belief system. You know how many people out there who were once very, passionate truthers who now have gone back and they are like truther hunters, and they go out and they argue with truthers, and they, are people who left the Christian religion to go do some other thing that turned out to be a bag of shit, so they ran back to Christianity, even though Christianity also sucks, right? Because the bottom line is, the truth about each person is painful. Like, if you could watch a movie where there was a movie based on your life and they really nailed your fucking issues, and you're watching it like maybe even like a long TV show, and you would more than likely hate the main character who is a representation of you, and you'd be pissed at the fucking person for being so clueless and not, making all these bad decisions and just fucking their beliefs and all that shit. And then you go like, holy shit, that's me. But there's no recognition. There's no, there'd be defense mechanisms preventing you from seeing yourself, even though the story's based in your life, because people don't want to see their own bullshit, right? They don't want to look through, they don't want to look in a true mirror and see the things that they have to change. And so they distract themselves. And this is why, even the truth community, it's like people are full of shit, right? Because really none of this stuff matters, because, most of this stuff doesn't really affect us in any real way. And when it does affect us, like, their changes aren't so drastic. Maybe things even get better. When it's political, national politics and national economics and things. But, the stuff that has to do with us that could change our existence and change us for the better, people don't want to work on that shit, right? Like, it's just too hard. People don't want to look at the stuff and, look at the divinity within them and embrace their higher nature, right? It's just, a sad state of affairs. And I've been seeing this for a while. I've had experiences, meditative experiences and spiritual things and, whatever it might be. And I've had my own personal change and growth. I don't think I'm, necessarily an expert at it or devoted as well. Like, for the amount of grace that I've been given, I work on myself and I work on it, what I'm talking about here, but it could be a lot better. Like, I think I'm like lowballing it for the amount of, the gifts I've gotten through the Sahaj Marg spiritual practice and my meditative experiences and things, and just, the insights that I've had. But, I really, as I've grown in terms of my being a truther, because I really just don't care. I don't have a belief system anymore. Like, I don't have I never really had it, so it's a little bit easier for me. But, I just don't, I have some preferences and, I like to make videos a certain way. And, sometimes I'll shit on some group of people or one person more than somebody else, and maybe undeservedly so. But really, I don't really care about it, right? Because, it's just a big fucking mess. And we're all a part of it. Like, we're all, we can't separate ourselves from the mess. The mess is our creation, our collective creation. And it's the distortion of reality that has created it. Because, you can see it. Like, everything's fucked up because people are rearranging reality to stick to things that they wouldn't. Like, they wouldn't if they didn't lie to themselves. If you wouldn't lie to yourself, you'd be like, oh yeah, I do that. I should, even if you didn't change it, just admitting it. Because then you wouldn't be projecting it on somebody else. Because almost everything that you hate is something you hate within yourself. It's some part of yourself that you see in other people that you hate, right? Hate is always self-directed. And so much of what we see here is about hatred. Hatred of the Democrats, hatred of the Republicans. When I look at these two groups, there's really no real difference. Joe Biden and Trump were almost identical. They're both old, groping, sexist, racist, myopic, narcissistic, cheating, grifting. One's a politician, one's a businessman, but both are failures, failing upwards somehow. Stupid, loudmouth. They have just all the same characteristics. Case in point was then when they were arguing in the debate about who had a better golf stroke as the world fucking burned, right? And so, this is what I'm talking about. And so the fact that people are looking at these two guys thinking that there's some kind of a difference and that one of them is going to make a difference or any number of things like that, right? That one party will or one belief system. And it's just a bunch of fucking shitty people who are self-centered and power-driven and, manipulative and they love fucking lying and fucking doing bad shit, right? And so, enjoy the making the suffering and making everything hard, and they enjoy the drama. There'd be no fucking drama, right? And people would just see the truth, because if you see the truth within yourself, you can see it with everybody else. Like, if you can recognize your own bullshit, then you see the bullshit in other people. And so, that's why I've been very successful. as, as a YouTuber and, this other thing. Because the more that you see your own bullshit, the more you can see this stuff in other people. So it's easy to say, hey, yeah, this is what I see. And you'll be right because, you understand. Like, you understand. Anyways, thought I would give this talk. I guess I'll put this in the beginning of my next video that'll be out. I don't know. We'll see. And also, this will be in the Journey series and maybe a standalone on whatever, the Gratefullness meditation channel. Okay, that's it for now. Okay, so that's for this update. I would say that it's hard to tell because of the health issues. I'm kind of stressed out about the tooth thing, and I'll be less stressed after today, and I have more of a plan in place. I've switched dentists, so I have a follow-up. I have a new dentist to go to, and so, get a lot of good information from viewers. Some of the things I'm trying out, some of the things are not specific to my case, but, it's something we all have to think about due to the nature of, allopathic medical model, for-profit medicine. So, but anyways, I'll do some, I had a moment, maybe I was doing the 9 o'clock prayer where my condition came back. Whenever you're in a gathering type situation, you want to have the condition linger as much as possible. And so that's kind of why I do an update. And they've had these issues, the health issue, which usually is better to have before the gathering for obvious reasons. And so I can't really tell. I did a cleaning last night. I think the condition's just still there. And hopefully it'll return after I have some resolution to the tooth thing. And I have a plan in place. I'm not in pain. The tooth isn't, it's not it's not like some big open wound there that you can see a clear abscess. It's a little bit trickier. But anyways, let me just wrap this one up here, and I'll do some follow-up videos. I'll also be covering this in the Journey series. Only spirituality will save this world. It's paramount, definitely important from the Apocalaughs and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.